All right, every Friday night I always say I'm not going to waste any time on the preface, just explaining what this format is. Everybody by now already knows what it is. We've been doing it for months. So I always say we're just going to get directly into, and you can say my dogs love Friday Q&A. They're all over the place, so you may hear them occasionally. They love Friday Q&A, so they might be a little bit boisterous. It's like Friday night, I dressed up down a little bit. Friday nights for being casual. The dogs can be a little rambunctious as well. Hope you are as well. All right, let's get into the first question that was way longer of a preface than I had thought it would be. And the first preface, the question is this, from Will Nunn. Hey, Glenn, can you talk about the disgusting Texas 31st candidate, Valentina Gomez, and what responsibility, if any, the conservative movement has in distancing herself and others like her? So for those of you who don't know who Valentina Gomez is, first of all, congratulations. You've really done something well for yourself. I'm sorry I'm going to disturb that tranquility. But she has been a Republican candidate. She is in good standing in the Republican Party to the extent that the Republican Party in Texas lets her run for office. She ran as a Republican primary candidate for Congress, a congressional district in Texas. I believe she ran for political office in Missouri as well, lost pretty decisively both times, but she's become a kind of social media spectacle. And she's, I think, in her late 20s and just tries to say the most repulsive things you can possibly say to draw attention to yourself. There's a kind of currency to this now where if you say the most racist thing possible, as long as it's not about one particular group, which I want to get into, then there's going to be a certain segment of the right-wing movement that is going to applaud you and think that you're somehow some important voice or some brave person because you're saying the most repellent things you can think of about some minority group, some vulnerable minority group, and hers that she loves to pick on is Muslim. She wants to expel all Muslims from our country, calls them garbage and like, as we're going to show you. And there's a lot of interesting things to say about this, including the fact that she's somebody who she wasn't born in the United States. She was born in Colombia, and she came to the United States, I think, when she was, as a teenager. She only became a U.S. citizen about 8 years ago. At the age of 18, she has no understanding of our country, of our Constitution, of our political culture. The things she says are just not only blatantly unconstitutional, but just so completely contrary to the way that, whether you're on the right or the left, the United States functions. It's really stuff that only somebody would say who has not really been steeped in American political culture before. She's just very alien to American politics. And ordinarily, this would be the kind of person that the conservative movement would hate, just for that reason alone, that she's Colombian, she came to the United States, she only became a citizen recently. This is something they constantly said about Zohran Mamdani. But she has become quite a social media presence, just by being particularly disgusting and then provoking, a bunch of people to call her racist. And because that term racist has been so overused and weaponized and exploited over the last 5 years, people developed a backlash to it, which was very natural and I think even valid. But it doesn't mean there is no such thing as racism. It doesn't mean there's no racist. Sort of like the way anti-Semitism is constantly exploited and weaponized to demonize people who criticize Israel. And that's certainly true. That's how it's often used, most often. But that doesn't mean there's no such thing as anti-Semitism. There still is something like anti-Semitism. And that's true of racism. So here, I think she got a lot more attention. And by the way, she's running in, I think it's the 31st congressional district. Yeah, that was what the question said. That is what it is. And she's running again. She's a primary challenger to an 84-year-old incumbent, sort of like state judge in Texas, calls himself like Judge. I don't remember his name, but he's a member of Congress, but he's a very obscure kind of backbencher member of Congress. He's 84 years old running for re-election. So that means by the time he finishes his term, if he wins, he'll be 86. And Trump just came out and endorsed him. I guess he finds this Valentina Gomez person either himself reprehensible or just believes that she is not a good brand for the Republican Party, especially heading into these very precarious midterms. But whatever it is, he decided he would rather endorse an 84-year-old incumbent than her. But I wouldn't underestimate her, just because in our political climate, the more outrage you produce, the more attention online you can draw to yourself, that can become political capital, even if it's done in the most primitive, reactionary, trite, empty way, un-American way. as she does. So I do think she's worth talking about because there's been this debate inside of the Republican Party in general, but inside the conservative and the MAGA movement in particular, over where to draw lines about people's views. Like when are some of these views so far out of the realm of decency that we have to expel them in good standing from our noble and pure movement, our decent movement. And a lot of this was prompted by the rise of Nick Fuentes and particularly Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes, which really served to elevate him among a lot of conservatives. And that was really when the implosion happened. And a lot of Republicans like Ted Cruz, who's, I think, planning to run in 2028 based on this view that not just Nick Fuentes, but Tucker Carlson are anti-Semites and we have to expel them from the party in the name of decency, are basically saying we can't tolerate racism in our party. And I've been saying the whole time, Republican Party, the conservative movement, you're absolutely fine being as racist as you can possibly want to be. The one thing you can't do is what Nick Fuentes does, which is speak about all groups equally, including Jews. That's the actual transgression. That's the actual offense. And the proof of that is if Nick Fuentes tried to run as a Republican Party candidate, they would bar him. They would never let him be a Republican Party candidate. But Valentina Gomez says infinitely worse things about Muslims than, I don't mean individual Muslims, I don't mean Muslim extremists, I mean just all Muslims, says infinitely worse things about Muslims, including American Muslims, than Nick Fuentes has ever said about Jews. And yet he's a bridge too far and she isn't. And that's why I think it's worth exploring. So here she was on Piers Morgan. This was just, you know when it was? It was December 3rd, which I know without even looking is a Wednesday because Monday was the 1st. You see how easy that is? So this was Wednesday night. No one even needs to tell me. I see the date, December 3rd. And here's just part of what she puked out on Piers Morgan.
In England.
But as you speak, you see, I'm just seeing a brazen Islamophobe. And people say that phrase doesn't exist. It doesn't. And I'm sure you find it funny, but I think you can make perfectly pertinent points about what's happened here without descending into such vile hatred towards an entire religion. And there are 5 million Muslims in the United States. Why would you want to categorize them in such a grotesque manner?
Oh, and those 5 million Muslims should definitely go back to their 56 Muslim nations. And let's get something very clear right now in your little show, Piers. I don't fear the groomers. I don't fear the pedophiles. I don't fear the corrupt politicians. And I definitely do not fear the dirty Muslims.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that in some very low level, primitive circles passes as for feisty courage. And like I said, a lot of her videos go mega viral among people who just love to hear people saying oh, the dirty Muslims, no dirty Muslims, get all 5 million out. She would obviously never dare say that about Jews or about people who have dual citizenship with Israel because that would get her kicked out of the party, but this doesn't, which is why I found all the outrage and the uproar over Nick Fuentes so disingenuous because it was masquerading as something completely different than what it really was. Nick Fuentes' crime is not being a racist or speaking disparagingly of minority groups or of women. There are all kinds of very popular right-wing pundits who do that. Nick Fuentes, what differentiates him is that he also speaks disparagingly of Israel and speaks openly and candidly about Jewish power. That's the actual problem that Republican establishment and even conservative pundits have with him. And this Valentina Gomez person, if she's not kicked out of the Republican Party, and I don't think she will be, is living proof of that. I mean, you heard what she just said. She says it all the time. She went to Israel, of course, 3 weeks ago. And even for Israel, her flagrant, just vomit against Muslims, and not some Muslims, not Islam, just Muslims in general. That even for Israel, they made those right-wing Israelis uncomfortable because they have to pretend that that's not how they think. They have 20% of their population that is Arab and Muslim, and they try and have relations with Muslim countries in the region like Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis. So even the Israelis can't speak in those terms and avoid speaking in those terms. I'm not saying that they don't think that way, but even they know enough not to speak that way. And she went there, and they even, she went on a couple TV shows, and they were very uncomfortable with her, obviously. Here is her campaign ad, just to give you, I mean, she's basically like a campy caricature of some like Colombian woman who comes to the United States and like reads a few like dumb blogs, listen to a few of the dumbest MAGA podcasts. And she's like, I know how I'm going to make a name for myself. I'm going to go even further. And she always having like wearing shirts with like machine guns and firing AR-15s or whatever. I mean, it's like I said, it's high camp, low camp, really. But I do think that she's gaining political capital in the conservative movement. Here is her campaign ad, part of it.
Texas, I've officially filed to become your next congresswoman. So the choice is yours. Vote for me so we can kick every dirty Muslim out of Texas. Save your daughters from getting raped by Mohammed and protect our soldiers from getting murdered in broad daylight. Let me be very clear. We will make Texas the worst place for groomers, terrorist Muslims, pedophiles, and illegals to live in, so help me God. For me, this is just an election. But for you and your daughter, this is your life. Because Texas has only gotten more Muslim under these weak Republicans. New York City already fell to Islam. So did Michigan and Minnesota. And you're next in line. If Texas falls to Islam, it's simply because you didn't vote correctly. God bless you all.
So let me ask you a question. If she were to go on Piers Morgan and say, I want to make Texas the most hostile place for Jewish garbage. I want all 7.5 million Jews in the United States, these trash, to get out of our country, go back to Israel. Or if she were to say, hey, New York has already fallen to the Jews, our country is captive to the Israeli lobby and the Jews, how many seconds do you think would elapse before the Republican Party immediately expels her from the party? About 3 seconds, maybe? She's been saying this stuff for a long time. She keeps joining the Republican Party wherever she goes. She also has a tendency she really wants to incorporate a lot of anti-LGBT language. She really wants to apply the same stuff to gay people. And you hear like some of these code words like groomers and pedophiles. The problem for her is that her brother, I think it's her older brother, is openly gay. And he actually worked for the mayor of Jersey City as his LGBT advisor. And it was discovered that he had donated money to her campaign while she was saying the most vile stuff, even about LGBTs, even though her brother is openly gay. And because he wouldn't apologize for having donated that money, the Jersey City mayor fired him. And now he's just sort of gotten more right-wing or whatever. But it's a little awkward problem for her because you can see her, she wants to do it so badly. But because her brother is openly gay and he seems very loyal to her, which is fantastic, he speaks with an even heavier accent than she does. Again, not the sort of person who would normally be applauded in Republican politics, and she knows that. So I guess she figures she has to go over. So I don't think she's important. I doubt she's going to win. I just think she kind of is a perfect test case to look at what really the problem is with Nick Fuentes or supposedly Tucker Carlson and anybody else who's been criticizing Israel, like Candace Owens. Like, what really is the problem? Is it really that, they make disparaging comments about a minority group, they seem bigoted? I mean, whatever bigotry is, I know it's wildly overused. It's a term I genuinely and almost always try to avoid just because of how stigmatized it's rightfully become through overuse. But if anything is bigotry, it's, again, what she's saying about Muslims, that's like classic bigotry. It's like, if you need to teach somebody bigotry, what it is, you would show them that video, like, all 5 million Muslims are filth and trash, and I'm going to make it dangerous for them. In Texas, they should all of them get out of here. And just, constantly saying they're a threat to your daughter, they're going to rape your daughter. Again, that's infinitely worse than, and Nick Fuentes doesn't really talk disparagingly about Jews. His crime is that he's very critical of Israel, and he talks about the Jewish lobby and the pro-Israel lobby and Jewish power and the way Jews organize as a ethnic group or religious group in a way that, in his view, white people are barred from organizing. Now, you can think about what that you want. You can even think that's bigoted if you want, but it's certainly nothing compared to what this person is saying. This cartoon, this caricature. And yet she's running as a candidate in the Republican Party.
Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.